Hello, 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 amigas, and welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. I am so excited to have a really wonderful, beautiful soul of a friend. Her name is Josie Padilla. And what makes Josie so incredible is that this woman has breaking glass ceilings in corporate America. She is now the COO of KORA Organics. And let me tell you something, she has been a chief, either a financial officer or chief operating officer of several international companies. And this has been for the past 7 years, ladies. Amigas, this woman is handling her shit. And I'm so proud to have her on as a guest on here at Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. And so, oh my God. So we're in for a beautiful treat, and I want her to explain how it all happened, because you don't become a chief just like one day you wake up and you're going to be a chief of an amazing international company. So she started off with an amazing education, but even before that, let's talk about her family background. So Josie, oh my God, I'm so excited. Welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast.
Thank you, Jackie. It's my pleasure to be here early on a Sunday morning. Thank you very much for having me. I'm so flattered you invited me, and I'm so excited to talk to you.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm the one that is super flattered here because I'm here amongst a beautiful soul inside and out. And education, I've always believed that education, it has tremendous value. And I know that you went to an Ivy League school. So it's so important for amigas out there who are aspiring for an education. This is a motivation. This is the time for you to rise up as a young woman or even an older woman who wants the desire to be educated. And this amiga that we have here, Josie, is a first generation Mexican American. So Josie, please explain, like, who is your family, the dynamics? Did they encourage you to go to an Ivy League school, to even to get an education? Are they educated? So please, without
Oh
further
yeah,
ado.
I'd be happy to go into that because it's one of the things that in my life I'm most proud of, and I am just you nailed it. It's education at the end of the day. Without education, it's not that things aren't doable. It's just a bit trickier. I think we all know that, right?
Right.
So a little bit about my family. As you mentioned, first generation Mexican American, born, here in Southern California, in Hollywood, as a matter of fact. Both my parents are from a small town in Jalisco, Mexico, Jalostotitlan. It's about an hour and a half outside of Guadalajara, the beautiful city of Guadalajara. Education did play, like the notion of education played a huge role for me from the moment I could remember just thinking about things as a child. My father came here when he was 17 years old. He came here after seeing what his older brothers were doing in terms of, work and getting ahead financially, and just wanted all that for himself. And so my father is one of the biggest heroes in my life, because what he and my mother did, I stop and think about it a lot. And I think, oh my God, at 17 years old, to leave the country, the only country you've ever known, not know how you're going to make it ahead, but just knowing wholeheartedly, having that faith that you're going to, do something better for yourself and your family is what carries you. So I would say that that's my father's a big influence on me in that respect, because since I was a kid, and my mother too, what I kept hearing was, we don't know how you're going to do it, but you're going to get an education. You're going to go to college. You're going to go to a great college. We will figure it out. So I grew up with that notion firmly in my head. Quite honestly, the only slight drawback, as you can imagine, is you don't think of any other option. That was the only option for me. It was just sort of the natural path, which I'm very thankful for, right? So, that's the sort of household I grew up with. My father didn't look at it in terms of gender lines. He used to say the same thing for all 5 of us. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and, he said it to all of us. So, luckily for me, there's the notion it takes a village as well, right? I look at kind of, sort of my background and my childhood and even into my teens and early, adulthood, is I had a village surrounding me, and that was helping me move ahead and giving, there were people my entire life that were supporting me and giving me opportunities and helping me understand the path ahead. So one of the next people that came along was a gentleman by the name of Jack Wright, who was my high school college advisor. I went to Franklin High School up near Pasadena, Northeast LA. Wonderful magnet program. Jack Wright had a very strong sort of college advisory program where he basically took the top students in our high school, mind you, mostly minority, Latinos, Asian American,
beautiful.
right?
Amazing. That is awesome.
So, he guided us every step of the way. Where my father, my mom and dad couldn't coach me, Jack Wright filled the gaps. And so, my aspirations growing up was, either, okay, and I hope I don't offend the USC people out there, UCLA.
And I graduated from USC, so
I'm good you. Well, God knows I have a ton of really close USC friends, and it's become, kind of our fun thing, USC Stanford rivalries. Why not?
I so remember the weekenders. I mean, I haven't done a weekend over to Stanford and USC in like years, but I mean, those are like so memorable. I love them.
Oh my God. Yeah, definitely. Firmly ingrained in my mind. So, he basically was, apply to whatever college you are interested in. I think you should throw some Ivy Leagues in there. Why not? And I remember that was the first time in my life where I thought, oh, I don't know, maybe he doesn't know who I am. Really, this doesn't feel right.
But knew exactly who you were, Oh,
yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now I can. Yeah.
So anyway, make a long story short, that's where that happened. And literally it still wasn't like, okay, everything fell into place and I knew where I was going in my life. I still had a lot of reservations and I kept feeling like, oh my God, someone's going to discover that I do not belong here. This is
I laugh not at you, but like with you, because I know what you're talking about. It's like, really? I can? Because your parents are not role models in the educational field. Like, you're just like, oh my God, I'm going to be the first one to get hired.
Absolutely.
So that's nerve-wracking. Yes.
You're right. And it felt like a completely different world, which if you think about it now in hindsight, it isn't a completely different world. We all live in one big, beautiful world and we're all connected to each other, Yeah. And so, so I, was thankful and lucky to have been accepted to Stanford University. I almost went back east because I also had gotten accepted into Princeton.
Woo!
Yeah. And so now, I mean, truth be told, I didn't make it across the board. I applied to 7 schools, didn't get accepted to either Yale or Harvard. So, oh well, they're lost.
They're lost. You're gay. You stayed on the West Coast,
stayed on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But even there, Jackie, again, Mr. Wright said to me, Josie, I know you've chosen Princeton, but, if you don't mind me kind of giving you some advice, you will be much happier at Stanford because you won't have to deal with really cold weather at times, being across the country. I know how close you are to your family. If you need to go back to your family, it's a 1-hour flight away. Right. So he helped me moderate, and I never looked back after that. I mean, it took me probably the first year being there to start feeling like I was at home. Right. And it was, thanks to, again, being surrounded by wonderful, supportive friends who also guided me every step along the way. I have one of my best friends who was a year ahead of me in school. Shout out to Mimi Gassage, Mimi, who, and my other dear friend, Sarija, they were also my support system because they encouraged me every step of the way and they showed me what could be done. Yeah. So it, like I said, it takes a village, and you will find if your eyes are open, you will find people along the way that want to help, and all it takes is asking for that help and making sure that they know, and there's nothing wrong with it,
Right. I think that oftentimes, especially women, Latinas in particular, we don't ask for help. And it is so important to ask for help because that's the only way, here's the thing, like you're a chief operating officer at this amazing company, but you actually have made decision to take women with you, carry them with you, because that's the way, you ask for help, you bring people to where you're at and guide them. And so you're just paving the way, just like your counselor Jack did and your friend Mimi. So this is beautiful. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. No, but you're absolutely right. And to this day, I mean, in all the chief roles I've had, there is no way you need help. To this day, I ask for help. I have people who in my company will come to me and say, do you need help? You need help. You have a lot on your plate. How can I help you? And there's, I will admit it's still a little bit tricky to say yes at times, but then you quickly realize that, it's right for the greater good. It's right for the company. It's right for the organization to ask for help. It's right for all those reasons, right?
Yeah. So then you graduated from Stanford, but then you decided to continue on with education. So please, where did you go and why did you go there? And why did you get an MBA versus another type of master's degree?
So for me, I finished school, was in the Bay Area for quite some time after that. I did spend a year back here in LA after school, still trying to, frankly, doing a little bit of soul searching and trying to figure out what to do next, which, I mean, again, that adjustment was a little bit tricky. And I'm sure it's probably not dissimilar from what other people went through at that time. I mean, I don't know if you went through it, but it's like, if you think about it, my life, if I go back and think about sort of the mantra that my dad was always putting out there about education and what comes next and that path. I mean, all through up until the time I finished, college, it felt all planned for me. Right. In a way, it wasn't in hindsight, obviously, because I made decisions about majors and what to do and whether, going overseas and all these things. But all of a sudden, it felt like it was really there were so many options. And so I needed to figure out what to do next. It was tricky. I'm not going to lie. It was very sort of unsettling for a while. But anyway, I ended up going back to the Bay Area, moved in with, my two girlfriends that I was talking about and another really good friend of ours. And from there, I started just kind of exploring different careers, did some temp jobs for a while. I won't even lie, did some temp jobs until I realized that, where my heart was all, where it's always been, which is math and numbers and finance. Like that's, yeah, I know. For most people, it's like, what?
Why?
So weird. Why? But, so how can I explain? I mean, I think in life, there's so much sort of, so many gray areas, so much, like I love flexibility as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like a real rigid person in terms of my personality. I have a lot of flexibility and open-mindedness as well. But the one area that I do love is the black and white nature of finance, numbers, and data. To this day. Yeah, right. So for example, a lot of times when we're talking about decisions that we need to make at work or influencing someone who may not be sort of coming along to where we need him or her to be so that we align as an organization, we start talking about the data. So what data do we have? What data can we present to help influence and make the right decision, right? You can't make good decisions without data. Right. So to me personally, that's sort of, I mean, call me, I guess I'm a big nerd to this day. I love it.
You're making data really sexy.
Sexy data. Right. Yeah. So that's kind of what I always gravitated toward. Went into education for a while, worked at UC San Francisco, worked with one of the deans, did some fundraising work, worked in a sort of a finance role for one of the medical departments. And then started realizing that I'd found what I love, but I wasn't being challenged enough. Right? And so hence came kind of the next decision point. Okay, so what comes next? And so I ended up, that's when I decided to go back to school.
Okay.
And I wasn't, unfortunately, at the point where, and actually financially, where I wanted to go back to school full time. But if I think about it, I wasn't sufficiently motivated to do that, because I would have found a way. Right. So
Right.
I ended up, yeah. So luckily for me, UC Berkeley, to this day, just like UCLA, and I think some of the other UCs as well, have evening MBA programs. It's the exact same course and curriculum as, a normal 2-year full-time MBA program. You just go to school for 3 years, and you do it in the evening after work, and you do it on weekends. You spend pretty much every weekend for 3 years, focused on projects and business cases and stuff. So that's what I did for 3 years. But what's interesting about that, and I was really scared of doing that too, because I thought, oh my God, what am I doing to myself? I'm going to probably get a lot of gray hair during this time, right? But what I quickly found was, again, like after the first year, I wasn't being challenged again. I thought I could use more, I need more. And what I realized was missing at that point was the work piece. So I ended up going into the private sector at that point. Yeah. And again, thanks to people around me who opened doors to some really interesting opportunities. Because what I started finding around that time is, if I started talking to people about areas of my life that I wasn't 100% happy about, then the more I talked about it, the more, people around me that I was close to wanted to help me figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so that's
angels, these little angels walking on earth right around you, which is just, they were planted there for a reason. Nothing is a coincidence. Everything has a reason behind it. Yeah. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, literally at that point, I remember starting to think about what next. And there was a wonderful opportunity that opened up in the private sector. So I went into, high tech in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley in the late 90s for that reason, and I kept going to school. Right. And with every year that went by, every few months, I realized how much more I was capable of doing and how organized I'd become during that period, because I had so much to do. I had no choice but to organize, more than I had ever in my life. And so now when people ask me what I feel I got the most out of in terms of business school, I mean, obviously, in addition to the educational aspects and, higher level financial, theoretical financial courses or organizational behavior courses, which are so necessary in business today, there was also this notion of, understanding how to work in diverse groups, right? Understanding how to take some really strong personalities, which, as you can imagine, in an MBA class, you have a lot of those.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm sure
what's that?
No, I'm sure very ego driven. So it's just a whole different
Well, yeah, there was some of that. And our class, we had a class of about 50 students. Each entering class was about 50 students in the program. The year that I entered, there were only 7 women. Only 7 of us.
And 7 Latinas, or 7? How many? Were you the only Latina?
That's correct. I was the only Latina in the group.
Yeah.
Which, again, I had another moment where I thought, okay, I don't know if I belong here. It's natural to feel that way, like when you feel you're different from others, but it's absolutely no reason to stop and move past that, because, again, you realize that the more you work through it, the more, you have in common with people,
Right.
And so it was definitely another growing experience, because, given, I don't think I'd ever been in an environment where there were so few women in the cohort, And so it was, again, pretty intimidating. I'm not going to lie. And I was surrounded by a lot of people who already had, since it was an evening MBA program, I think I'd been out of school for 6 years at that point.
Okay.
There were some people who had been out of school for 10, 15 years who also had, VP titles. I don't think we had any CEOs, but we had a doctor, for example, who decided to go back and get an MBA now
because a medical degree is not enough.
No, it's not. You got to have more. So I was really intimate, because I think at the time I was an analyst, when I started school. Yeah. And so I kept thinking, oh my God, everyone's going to figure out that I don't belong in this cohort.
Oh, the imposter syndrome. Yeah.
imposter syndrome creeping up again for sure. But you know what sort of, obviously that changed over time, but I remember a big turning point was about maybe 2 years into the program where, you know, obviously I kept working through it and muddling through and building relationships with everybody that I knew, men and women, and it just became easier over time. But I remember working with a project team one weekend where, you know, we were coming together during the last phases of a project and we were going to discuss, you know, progress on the section that everybody had been assigned. And so there were 2 of us females on the project, and I think 4 men, if I remember correctly. And so she and I, my friend and I, had done what we needed to do and we came prepared and ready to go. And when we got to that meeting, which was on a beautiful Saturday morning when nobody wanted to be working or working on school stuff, so that we all got together. And I kid you not, Jackie, 2 of the men did not do what they were supposed to. They hadn't done it. And we, like, I want to say the project was due in the next week or 2. So at that point, you know, they were sort of, it was, the dynamic was they were sort of, hoping that we would take on their work.
Of course.
If you will, right?
And
it had to be
and we, I mean, let's face it, we always do.
Yeah, we usually do.
Usually do. Yes.
But that morning I had enough and I realized I didn't want to take it anymore because it had happened before, you know. And I remember I just put my foot down and I said, absolutely not. This is what you guys committed to doing, that we've already done our part and then even some. And no, you need to go back and you need to get this taken care of. We are not going to do this for you, period. And I remember seeing, yeah, and I may have raised my voice a little bit and maybe dropped a couple of expletives, and which I wouldn't always advocate. I would probably rarely advocate that. Really, there are better ways to get that done. But I kind of hit that sort of turning point,
yeah,
where I just was done and I wasn't going to take it anymore. And the looks, I remember so clearly the looks on their faces because they didn't expect it.
Of course not. Of course not. Oh my God. I mean, these the dynamics between men and women have always been like, oh, I'll help you out, just by nature. You know, we're nurturers. We always come to the aid to help out. And when you say, hell no, your responsibility, you get it done. I'm not going to help you out here. Good for you. I'm so amazed and proud of you because it really takes guts. I mean, sometimes, you know, I mean, I'm all about like being truth talking here, but it's cojones. You got it, you know, like you got to. Yeah.
You have to. And you know what, it was even more than that, though. It was also this realization that I had done my homework. Mm-hmm. I had learned my material. I knew what I was talking about. And these were the same individuals, you know, because MBA classes, you know, probably similar to law school, right? It's like they're mostly case study based classes. You go and you read an article, you come prepared with, you know, to be part of a big discussion. It's not like a lecture usually, right? And so these were the same people that more often than not were the biggest talkers in class and the ones that seemed to know everything. I realized they didn't. And so from that point forward, my whole experience changed again because I felt that I was on equal footing and even better footing than a lot of them, you know? And so, yeah.
Yes. Wow. That's awesome. That realization that we're on an equal footing here. You're no different than me. So own up, you slacker. Because if you're not going to, I'm going to keep going forward, you know? So super awesome. Amigas, listen, Josie didn't take, you know, she didn't take any bullshit from anyone. She actually stood up for what she believed in and she made it happen. So if you are in a situation out there, amigas, where someone is trying to bully you or trying to convince you to do their work, no, step up, speak up. Don't let them push you over.
You have to. And, you know, for those that, you know, I considered myself like sort of wanting to always avoid any sort of, you know, butting heads or anything, like just conflict avoidance was who I thought was, you know, part of my personality. And quite honestly, it doesn't even have to be that way.
Right.
So when you stand up and you make your voice heard, it doesn't have to be combative. Like you're not going to, you know, you can do things in a way where if somebody's position is different, and I'd like to think that more often than not, 98% of the time, that's the situation you find yourself in, where you're you find you have just a different opinion over someone, and you need to make your voice heard. There are ways to do that in which it's not combative and it's not off-putting, right? So when you talk about standing like for what you believe in and not taking shit, it doesn't have to be this big combative thing. It can be a really subtle thing, and it can be about influence, right? Influencing people.
Amen
So,
to that. Well,
that's right.
you're an influencer for sure. So you then graduated, got your MBA. You started working. Well, you had already been working, but you've been moving up the corporate ladder. And when I read your LinkedIn page, I was looking. I'm like, wow, she's been a chief, either a CFO or COO for the past 7 years. And then within that, I started noticing that you have had executive roles in the food and spirits and in that industry, but now you're in the beauty industry. So how does that happen? Is it that because you have the same blueprint of operating, like you could carry that in different industries? Like you don't have to stay just in the food service, let's say, and in the beauty industry. You can just change it around. Is that?
Yeah, you can. You definitely can. As we were talking, I mean, I started my career in finance, right? Moving through finance roles. But for like finance and operations, in a lot of companies, well, most companies have to work very closely together. They're usually tied at the hip, right? So that's sort of one natural kind of way to sort of get into the other. And I can explain how that happened for me personally if you guys are interested. But the other thing is, I would say that there are a lot of things called transferable skills, for different functions, right? So that's certainly the case for finance operating. I would argue for any field, any function you're in, whether you're in sales, marketing, there are a lot of transferable skills from one industry to the other. The thing I would say specifically, the commonality between beauty, which I'm in right now, food, which I did a brief stint in, and beverages, which I spent, more than 12 years of my career in. They're all consumer product goods. So in what they call the CPG space. So there's commonality there in terms of how you run companies. There are a lot of commonalities, for example, in all three types of industries, there's inventory you need to deal with. They're sort of short-term consumable goods, physical inventory that you're accounting for and you're tracking, whether you're on the operations or the finance side, right? So that's one commonality in finance, and this holds true for even non-CPG companies. Most well-run companies will have financial statements, that you run.
Yeah.
I would hope at least once a year, if not sooner, or if not more often.
You need to know your profit loss. I mean,
right.
How are you operational? Like, yes, of course, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So there are a lot of commonalities and a lot of transferable skills. But, for me personally, it's also this notion of growth. Like I've always had an appetite for continuing to grow and learn more, and having periods in my life where I've been a little bit uncomfortable because I don't know things. Like when you jump to a new role or a new company, it's uncomfortable for a period of time because you don't know everything, especially if you went from being somewhere where you did. So it's almost like I view like the educational process or career advancement is like steps, or even really messy steps. It's not like a linear ascent. You just kind of have to like go up, sort of dabble, like learn, master a skill, master an area, and then keep growing, And so that's always been my drive, quite honestly. And I start reaching this point where, and it can be in an environment where, I really love everybody I work with. I love the division, and I've been very blessed to have worked at a number of places like that. That's one of the things I feel, so just blessed about, being able to have had those experiences. But nonetheless, if you're still not learning anymore, I've had that sort of drive to just go somewhere else then. And so that's what's always kept me going.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wonderful. I mean, it's amigas out there who are listening. It's like, you gotta keep on growing. Keep growing and just finding your way. I mean, what I realize is that going from food now to beauty, and I'm like, and I'm a girly girl, so I'm like, ooh, I love beauty. So I'm just like, okay, so you found your way through the beauty industry. So how different is it from the beauty and food? Like I feel like I know you're selling something. I know the financials are financials, but the actual product, I mean, is it, I don't know, how do you make that decision? Like you went from food and now you're like beauty. Like what was that? Why did you make the decision to get into beauty?
Well, it's interesting for me too. If you don't mind me going back really quickly to when I was in high tech in the Bay Area, I worked for a lot of really small entrepreneurial firms, and it was right around the time that sort of the early 2000s after the market had crashed initially. And, big tech was really big in the late 90s, and all of a sudden everything, the market course corrected. And so, I ended up, unfortunately, at the time, it felt like my career was sort of stalling and I wasn't sure where to go because companies kept shutting their doors or being acquired, or there was just a lot of contraction in the industry because of what had happened. And so, I worked for, again, a lot of small companies, which was great because I got that entrepreneurial experience. And then I went to go work for Coca-Cola by moving back down here in the late 2000s when I decided, okay, I think it's felt a little bit unstable. I want more stability. And at that point, I had a recruiter literally reach out to me out of the blue, a headhunter, and said, I've got this opportunity at Coca-Cola. You can't get more stable than that. But, it's a double-edged sword, right? So be careful what you ask. Do you really want to be that stable? Because it's really stable. And I thought, you know what? I need stability. It's a world-class company.
Yeah.
I will learn a ton there. Oh yeah, sign me up, which is what happened. I mean, I was there for 12 years in 5 different roles. And every single time I learned more and more about my function, operations as well, leadership in general.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola was it was such an amazing experience because you were really, nurtured. And if you were seen as having potential, they invested in you, and I had, so all it took was for me to say, yes, I accept going to this leadership course here in Atlanta for a week, or yeah, I want to go to that training, or yeah, absolutely sign me up for that leadership assessment. I was always willing to say yes to all those things and fit them into my busy work schedule because I realized that was a way to explore further and understand what else was out there. And it made me scared to take those up to sort of take on those opportunities or do those things because it kind of felt like being back in school and being tested a little bit and sort of being in the classroom, which kind of made me cringe a little, but I forced myself to do it because I grew every single time, so it's that discomfort again. So anyway, fast forward to moving to beauty. When I was ready for a new role, leaving a small food company I joined that just didn't work out. And again, not every career move I worked out really well. And that's okay. I mean, those things happen and you just kind of pick yourself up by the proverbial bootstraps and you keep going, right? And you learn something in every role. Anyway, I had been contacted again by a recruiter, and thank God for social media, by the way, LinkedIn. Amigas, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile and you want to build a network, that is the easiest, way to do it. And I don't want to say you don't have to try because you do, but
yeah, no, of course.
I mean, massive avenue, right?
Yes.
So somebody reached out to me and basically, forwarded a job description of a role in a beauty company owned by a large multinational. So it was a fairly recent acquisition, had happened 2 years before. Company still fairly small, independently run, still entrepreneurially run up in Beverly Hills with its own offices, its own CEO, its own leadership team, but owned by a massive multinational based out of London, right? Mm-hmm. So when I viewed that opportunity, and believe it or not, that opportunity also came my way via 2 or 3 other people in my network. Even after I had already accepted an offer from them, it was around the holidays and a friend of mine didn't even know that I had accepted an offer and sent me a job description. Actually, a friend of mine, former employee of mine, said to me, hey, I'm forwarding this to you, Josie. I just came across this online. This sounds like the perfect job for you. Well, what he didn't know is that I had just literally accepted verbally.
Well, it's like the universe is just, it's definitely like showing you is like, yes, this is for you. Here you go. I mean, what better sign?
Exactly. But the thing about it that, sort of made me really excited about it was the fact that, hey, I knew what their goal was. The goal was to grow this company, double digits every year and make it profitable, right? And so because of my experiences working with small entrepreneurial companies in the Bay Area and knowing what that environment is and knowing how you have to maneuver and multitask and be flexible, and then also knowing what you want to get to in terms of a more sort of corporate environment once you've grown, because you need to have something more corporate and structural once you get to be a certain size. I knew the from and the to. And so that's why the role was so exciting to me, because I thought all these years and all the work I've been doing and all the roles have culminated in this. And so again, the only challenge was that now it was in beauty versus, food and beverage.
Right.
But I realized again, because the transferable skills and the, way overshadowed whatever little differences they were, it was a matter of coming on board and learning those things that were new to me as quickly as possible. So that was sort of my focus for the first, 6 months of the job. Learn the beauty industry, talk to people in the beauty industry, grow my network there, right? Help, understand how it may be different than food and beverage and figure that out, right? So that was a big focus of mine right at the beginning.
Wow. And it's a moment of growth. Like you're learning a new thing, a new, new skills as you're moving away. Moving up the ladder, if you will. Because even like, I know from my family, I come from a very entrepreneur family and we're in the food and service industry. So I know what it takes to do that. And to learn that there's transferable skills to the beauty industry. I'm like, oh, how enticing, ladies out there that.
But think about it, Jackie. And how do you figure that out? You talk to people. And again, it's like, you would find that the things you don't know, if someone else may know this, and it may even be someone that you don't know. There are a lot of people that you can just email and ask a question about, either you found them through your alumni network or through mutual friends on LinkedIn or whatever it is. Most people will immediately respond and say, I would be more than happy to chat with you if you just want to explore. People will always help. It's just a matter of asking for that.
Asking. And that what I'm hearing from you, it's about asking, about connections, and that there's always people out there willing to help you out. I love that. I love this like whole trilogy. Like if you have those three things, you're going to do whatever you want to do. Right.
That's
like
right. Yeah.
you can be anything, literally. Like, it's not a lie. You can be anything you want to be, just ask, right?
The only thing holding you back is your own state of mind, your own fear, your own, fear of failure, for example. To me, the one thing that I'm so thankful, and again, I would say I got this trait from my father, is the ability to take risks. But in my view, in my life, it's been calculated risk. My father, I would say, in his career was probably, I don't know if he would agree with this. I think he would, actually. He was probably a little bit more of a risk taker, because my father, through his career, was mostly entrepreneurial and starting his own companies. I don't have that amount of risk tolerance, for example, but I have had it to the extent where, as scary as it has felt at certain times to make a career switch or go for that promotion or move to a different industry, I have still done it. And, if you ask my husband, there's been a couple times where I've all of a sudden, when I've, verbally accepted something or a move or whatever, where I've looked at him and said, oh my God, what am I doing? I just did this. Oh my God, and then he helps to settle me down. It's okay. It'll be okay.
Everything will be fine. So your
right.
KORA Organics, what's next for you?
I joined KORA about 7 months ago. So, what's next for me is to continue at KORA. We have a lot of work to do. I'm very excited about, what KORA represents and who we are in the industry. We're one of the few, certified EcoCert Cosmos certified organic brands, and we take that very seriously. The company has a lot of growth potential, and to me, it speaks to my heart in terms of what we are offering consumers, especially since we've been, mostly in lockdown this year. It's been, I know for me and a lot of the people I know, self-care has become even more important, finding ways to do it at home and to take care of yourself, and not just, physically, but mentally, and not just your skin, but your state of mind. I mean, that's what we talk about a lot at work, we focus on that a lot. It's very important to us. So, this is definitely a company that speaks to my heart, and that's what makes it so, I wouldn't say easy, because it's never easy, but it makes it easier for me to do what I need to do every day. So it's just to continue growing. I have aspirations to go nowhere for a while, and then we'll see after that.
Well, nowhere but everywhere.
Nowhere but everywhere. Well, and there is something too, I will say. So we've been working from home since mid-March.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, there are certain things that normally I would have done in this role that I haven't been able to do, like, travel around a lot, travel to see our customers, we have a division in Australia, I haven't been able to go see them. They haven't been able to come see us. So I'm really looking forward to things like that, because I think once we're able to do that again, it's just going to unlock way more opportunities too,
Oh, for sure. For sure. So as we are here at the almost the finish line, one of the things that I always ask my guests, and I'm so grateful to have you here, is like, if you could share 1 or 2 tips on how Amiga can handle their shit.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd love to. So the first one is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And, take your risks, as I was saying. I mean, it's important. It is super important to take risks in life. And as we were saying earlier, you can be anything you want to be. And I think if you're willing to kind of talk to other people, talk to your network, look around you, there are people that bring so much to the table, and, they will help you along, but, no one's going to know what your aspirations are unless you talk to people about them. And you take those risks and you experiment a little. Even if you fail, it's not the end of the world. You fail, maybe, even if you fail multiple times, as long as you're not failing at the same thing over and over again, because that's kind of an exercise in futility. But, don't be afraid to fail. I've learned something every single time I've failed, and I have failed a few times. And then the other thing I would say is, there are a lot of times where you're presented with a problem, an issue that you've never had to face or confront before. And, I know when I've had those moments, and I've had a handful of them, it's been, I would say 2 or 3 times, where I have stopped and thought, oh my God, how am I possibly going to fix this one or work on this one? How can I make this one better? I don't even know how I'm going to do it. I feel at times feels like it's impossible. What I would say is never give up. I recently read an article about the trait that, one of those traits that makes people really, really successful is the ability to look at a problem from every different aspect, and to be relentless in trying to figure out how to fix that problem, to look at it from every angle, to keep thinking about it. And it may sound exhausting, but that's that. And it's happened to me a few times, where you keep looking at it, you think about different ways, you put it away, put it in the back of your head for a while, or put it away on your desk, don't think about it for a while, come back to it. Or even like in my case, what's helped too is, I'll go out for a run, or I'll walk the dog. And as I'm getting, the adrenaline going and thinking about things, all of a sudden an idea will pop into my head. And I'm like, there's the solution. That's what it is. And believe it or not, sometimes you realize that solution was right in front of you. And because you were maybe so close to the problem, you didn't really see it, but eventually it comes. So I think having that persistence to figure some big issue out and never let it go, that's big too. So
Huge. Be relentless, amigas. You heard it. Be relentless. And when you get stuck, change your state. Go out for a walk, go run, do something different to take, pivot or change the trajectory. and refocus and come back and be relentless. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Especially right now where, a lot of us are at home, even go for a drive. It's so funny. In normal times, I would never say, get in your car and go for a drive around LA. That's probably not good advice. But right now, it's actually not bad advice.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It is not bad advice at all. Just definitely go out there and change your state in some way, some capacity, because if you are confronted with a problem or issue, you really have to change that state of mind. And one of the things to break the pattern is changing the state. So thank you for that, Josie. Oh my God, you're amazing. I can't wait to hear more about you. Would love to bring you back if that's okay with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, the volume, I think
I would love to come back. I would love to come back anytime. It's my pleasure. I mean, one of my, the last few years, especially, I mean, this has always been a goal of mine, but I always want to give back because, if it helps to hear, even if it helps even one person to realize that your full potential, it's all in you. There's no one else holding you back. Then, my day's complete. Yay. It's going to be a great Sunday.
Yes, absolutely. So we're starting our Sunday really, really nicely. Very well. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Josie. And everyone here, please, 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 education is super important. May not be for everybody, but for those of you who are interested in education, remember that go seek out your mentors, seek out those mentors because they are there. They're waiting for you. And just like Josie had Jack Wright as her mentor, to pave the way for her, you're going to find your own Jack out there.
So, it's never too late.
Never too
late.
Never too late. Thank you so much. Until next one.